scary for filmmakers who don't have that release right now, and it's going to be an increasingly big issue for filmmakers, and it's something we're going to have to address with the streamers at some point.
Because I really have a bad feeling, and I'm scared for the future of this art form that I love.
So, I saw this amazing video by Chris Stuckmann. If you don't know who he is, go over to his channel and watch his content. He is fantastic. Chris is currently making a movie. I think he's in post-production on his feature, Shelby Oaks. Now, I've actually donated towards the making of this film with, I think it was either GoFundMe campaign, or we had a Discord campaign where he wanted people to help fund the film. So I love the guy. I'm not trying to name drop him for clicks. This is not what this video is about. I just really wanted to go into this.
1,000 people have talked about this forever, and I'm not the first person to say this, but the thing is, it's like we often complain that movies aren't the same as they used to be. Why don't they make them like they used to? That doesn't look like a real movie, blah, blah, blah. We hear those complaints all the time, and then we go home and we pirate movies, or we don't buy the Blu-ray, or we don't go to the theater, and we wonder why Hollywood isn't hearing us, and it's because the only way they do is if we spend money. So I don't want to sit here and look like I'm someone who's trying to encourage people to change their lives around to support film, but I do think that we need to change the way we view it.
From his perspective, he sees the film industry changing quite significantly. Now, I see this as well. Being a director and a writer myself, and I'm also produced myself, I can see that the industry is definitely changing. Everything's being pushed towards streaming. Nothing's really going into cinemas anymore. If you look at the amount of films that are being made, and I mean not just the Hollywood films, I mean all sorts of films, most of them are going to streaming. So I would say right now, if I'm being honest with you, 99% of films are going towards streaming. So if you go to your Amazon account, or if you go to Netflix, you'll see on a weekly basis, there are maybe anywhere between 100 to 200 new titles being uploaded every single week, especially on Amazon. So yes, the industry is changing significantly. I myself, like Chris, am quite disillusioned by the industry. Differently so. He is still a huge proponent of attending the cinema, and this is what his video is about. I unfortunately gave up on that idea. I saw a double feature of Oppenheimer and Barbie, and it was good for the most part, but I've not been back to the cinemas since, and I've not been compelled to do so either. I feel like Chris's opinion on this differs to mine in a very significant way. He speaks very passionately about a few things, but one of the things that I really want to go into right now is he thinks it's the responsibility of the cinema-going public to turn up and watch whatever's put in front of them.
My concern with the MCU going downhill is that a lot of people are only going to the movie theaters to watch these giant movies. And if the MCU is going downhill and less people go to the movie theater to watch the MCU movies because A, they're just waiting for Disney Plus, or B, they're not as good anymore, what's going to be the next big thing that gets people to go to the movie theaters? And I can tell you that this year I did feel a lot of hope with Barbie and Oppenheimer doing as well as they did. But a lot of that is because we kind of made it a moment.
I do not agree with this. I feel, and the reason why I scarcely go to the cinema is because the films that are coming to the cinema are simply not good enough. And quite frankly, over the past decade, this has been the case. I remember watching Ghost in the Shell with Scarlett Johansson, and I left the cinema thinking, I don't want to go back to the cinema again. I felt like someone had broken into my house, taken my PlayStation 5, pissed on my floor, shat on my carpet, and then left the front door open and left. It felt like I'd been abused. Now, I don't like that feeling. I really don't. And I don't want to have to feel that feeling again. So when I saw Doctor Strange last year and I was not enthused by it, and again, I can't put my finger on why that was, because it's not the worst Marvel film, but I felt abused again. I felt like someone had walked into my house, pissed on my bed whilst I was sleeping, left, and I woke up and all I could smell was piss. And I thought, do you know what? I need to get a proper security system. That's how I felt. Now, my problem with what Chris says is He's saying that we need to adjust, or not we, he's saying the cinema-going public need to adjust the way they perceive films. He cited a film called Beau is Afraid, which was directed by Ari Aster and came out very recently. It stars Joaquin Phoenix, who's an amazing actor. I've not personally seen the film myself. Now, the reason I didn't see the film was it's 3 hours long. And it's, from what I can hear and what I've been told, about nothing. This film made only $11 million at the box office. Now, that is not great. That will stop a studio like A24, who produced it, from making films like this in the future, which I kind of agree with Chris when he says it's worrying because A24 may not want to make another film like this in the future, based on the box office receipts and the money that they put into it. Now, my major issue here is if the studios make better films, people will attend better films. Oppenheimer and Barbie are the classic examples of that. Now, I didn't particularly like Barbie that much. Oppenheimer was okay. So it wasn't about the quality of the film so much, it's about how you package it. But on top of that, you can't just deliver trash. Now, Christopher Nolan does not deliver trash. So people came to the cinema thinking, I'm going to have a good time. Barbie looked fantastic. It was marketed really well. People went to the cinema thinking, I'm going to have a good time. Now, that same audience who went to go and see Barbie, you would think will turn up for the Marvels, but of course they're not going to turn up for the Marvels because people are tired, and I'm sorry to say this, they're tired of superhero films. They are. We're trying to tiptoe around the subject that people don't like superhero films anymore. They don't. And unfortunately, if you break people's trusts, they will respond in kind. And this is what's happened. We had a whole factory line of poor DC films. We've had a whole production line of poor Marvel films, and the trust is broken. And unfortunately, it's not going to come back. Now, what you have are people who do not trust to go to the cinema and be entertained. Going to the cinema is very expensive, and no one wants to spend $30 to $40 on a ticket and be presented with this. I mean, to me, that is unacceptable. Now, Chris also went into the idea that there should be more chances taken in cinema, and he did cite Beau is Afraid as one of those examples. I don't necessarily agree with this. Now, I'm going to do a whole video about this very shortly, but one of the things that are really killing the industry right now is these long-ass movies. 2 hours 30, 3 hours, 3 hours 15. This is not how you make a movie. That is indulgence taken to an extreme. Now, when Justice League came out, I went to see it, and it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Zack Snyder came out with his 4-hour cut of the movie, and it was better. It wasn't great, but it was better. But 4 hours. Listen, I make films myself, and I am of the opinion that if you cannot get your point across within 2 hours or 2 hours and a half max, what is your film about? Now, that's not to say there shouldn't be epic films. Lawrence of Arabia is stunning. It's such a vast subject that happens over so many years. It's an historical film based on true facts. That, for me, could be a 3-hour film, and is. Napoleon, the most recent film that's come out from Ridley Scott, that lends itself to a 3-hour film. 4 hours is too long for a film. Now, I'm going to contradict myself because in my video about this subject, when I break this down completely, I am going to say that a film should be as long as it needs to be. And I think that's the key expression here. It needs to be. A lot of these films don't need to be 3, 4, 4.5 hours long. That is not acceptable. That is the sign that a director has too much control, too much indulgence, and doesn't want to pare down their script. Again, I'm going to do a video about directors who, over the years, have had the edit of their film taken out of their hands, whether it's led to good things or bad things. Now, to go back to Chris, As I said, I'm a huge fan, but I do not agree with the fact that we need to change the way we think in order to improve the industry. It's really the other way around. This is not a chicken and the egg scenario. This is very simple. If you make better movies, people will go and see the film.
If you build, you will come.
It's as simple as that. Aside from that, I think one of the things that Chris cited, which again is an evolution of the industry, is that there are so many streaming platforms that are releasing, let's call it content, and everything's going into that, and everyone can recognize they can sit at home and watch a film from the comfort of their living room or their bedroom or wherever they want to be, on the toilet if they want to be. This has made watching habits change significantly. I don't see this as a bad thing. I think there's a magic of going to the cinema, sitting with an audience, or sitting by yourself even, and really ingesting the beauty of a film. There's something magical about that, but it doesn't need to be an everyday thing. Now, I think what needs to happen is very simple. I think everyone needs to come off their high horses, everyone needs to accept there's a change, and I think the industry needs to burn itself out and start again. That's what needs to happen. And that's what's going to happen. Because this is not sustainable. Studios cannot keep financing $200 million films for them to lose money. Aside from that, Amazon, Apple, Netflix cannot keep financing their own original productions and then not disclosing their numbers because the numbers are so bad. They are also losing money. So what's going to naturally happen is the bottom is going to fall out of this equation. And what you're going to be left with are ashes. And from the ashes, we'll see a regrowth, a new birth of cinema. And that will be beautiful. Because what will happen is, we'll come back to the days when there were mid-budget movies. And you'll find that a lot of these mid-budget movies are the best films you have ever seen. And right now, because we don't have those mid-budget movies, we're having huge studio productions that are mainly superhero films that are flopping and are poorly told and are going nowhere. And then you have very low budget films that any filmmaker in the world can make on their iPhone, on their purchased camera, which are not being overseen or overlooked with any sort of quality control. So we're in this dark place where quality is not being managed. And unfortunately, because of that, trust in cinema is at an all-time low. And once we get back to those mid-budget movies that are being polished and finessed and brought to the audiences that really crave them with the quality needed, we'll see a rise in people going to the cinema. I think it's as simple as that. I think the last thing I wanted to delve into was Chris stating that Warner Brothers delete movies.
Entire filmmakers, movies, and TV shows are disappearing from streaming services. For example, did you know that Mike Flanagan's great movie Hush is no longer on Netflix?
Asked about the idea of a streaming service disappearing a film, Emma Thomas can think of a word to describe it.
I can imagine plenty of bad things, but I think it would be absolutely appalling to spend 2 years of your life on a movie and then have it just disappear completely or not be allowed a release. I think that would just be a terrible thing. So I sympathise deeply with the filmmakers that's happened to.
Now, Christopher Nolan stopped working with Warner Brothers because during COVID, they decided to release movies in cinema and on streaming on the same day. Warner Brothers have a track history for things of such nature. However, I disagree with Chris again here. So we recently had the Batgirl movie, which was erased from existence. They went into the editing suite and they dragged the footage into the bin. I haven't got an issue with this. Now, I know a lot of people have worked on the film, but they've been paid. As I said, I'm a director. I've worked on numerous films. Crew, typically speaking, are there to get paid. They don't really care about the project. They've not read the script. They're not well invested into the project. They may have put hours into getting a particular shot or whatever, but they don't actually care about the project. They actually really do not care. Now, this is not across the board. This is a majority case that, in most cases, it's just a job for them. They turn up on set, they switch on the lights, they switch off the lights, they go home. and then they move on to the next set. So they don't care, as long as they've been paid. And in this instance, in the Batgirl movie, they were all paid. So let's get that away from the conversation. It's not important. Is it important to the directors? Is it important to the lead actress who's now lost a lead role, her first lead role? She's just been wiped from existence. Yes, it's very important to the director, to the writer. In fact, it's important to quite a few people who worked on the film. But essentially, if Warner Brothers think that film sucks, if they think it's going to lose money, then why shouldn't they write it off? We have to understand, film is indeed an art, but it is also a commerce. There's no reason in the world that a studio who have financed a movie that they think is going to lose money shouldn't be allowed to delete that film so they don't lose as much money. That's their prerogative. And if you, as a filmmaker, make a bad film, well, one of many things are going to happen. There's a fair chance you may not work again, which I wouldn't wish upon anyone. There's a fair chance that you're going to be criticized by the critics, by the general public. There's a fair chance that no one's ever going to see it. And there's also a fair chance that Warner Brothers might just delete your film. And those are the risks you take when you go into the film industry. You're putting your art out there to be displayed. You're putting your art out there to be criticized. And unfortunately, when you're working in commerce, you're putting your art out there to be purchased. And if it's not going to be purchased, you may find yourself in a position where the people financing your wonderful art project decide that it's not really worth their time or finances to keep it in play. I think to conclude here, my thoughts on the industry are very simple. It needs to burn. It needs to burn to the ground. There needs to be a rebirth. There needs to be a cleansing. Everything needs to start again. We're really at a point now where, you had the SAG strikes, you had the writers' strikes, you've had studios, you've had production companies, you've had actors not working, you've had things shut down for maybe 3 to 4 months. At a point now where streaming services, as I've mentioned, are financing projects that are not making a profit and that nobody is watching. At a point now where AI is potentially going to be used to write scripts, to replace actors. We're at a point now where I feel the basic 3-act structure, for some reason, has been broken, where consistently writers and directors are trying to subvert their audiences. I don't understand it. So I think starting again is not a bad thing. The art form will always be there. People will always make movies, but from the top, where things trickle down, if that can be rebirthed into something beautiful, where there are proper legislations, proper ideals, proper pay for actors, proper pay for writers, proper acknowledgement for anyone in the industry, I think that is the way forward. I would stop blaming audiences. I would definitely start blaming studios. I would definitely start putting better movies out there and get people's bums back on seats. Now, if you're not subscribed to Chris Stuckmann, please subscribe to him. He is a fantastic film reviewer. He has some wonderful, wonderful points about the film industry. On top of that, as I said, he's making his first feature film, which is amazing. I can't wait to see it. And I've not met him, but he seems like a really genuinely nice person. So get over there, get subscribed to Chris. If you've got any comments about how the industry can change, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, do put them in the comments. I would love to hear them. Please watch my previous videos, most of them about cinema dying. And if you watch this, I really appreciate you watching it. And big love.
Help! 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 Well, what happened to you? They tore my legs off and they threw them over there. Then they took my chest out and they threw it over there. Well, that's you all over.